Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into Gen Z and how they're not just looking for new jobs, they're tearing up the old career rulebook and writing a totally new one.
I mean, you've heard it all, right? They're called lazy, entitled, unambitious. But what if that's completely missing the point? The data suggests something way more interesting is going on. This isn't about a lack of drive. It's about playing a whole new game. Because let's be honest, the world they're entering is nothing like the one their parents knew.
Okay, so first up, let's tackle this whole idea of ambition. What does a career even mean to Gen Z, and are they really giving up on it?
You know, this is the question that's keeping a lot of managers up at night. And honestly, if you just glance at the headlines, you might think, yeah, the career ladder is dead.
Get this, a Glassdoor report found that 68%, that's more than 2/3 of Gen Z workers, are basically saying no thanks to the whole corporate hierarchy thing. They're just not interested in that slow, predictable climb.
And then Deloitte finds that only 6%, just 6%, say their main goal is to get a leadership title. I mean, wow, the corner office just doesn't have that same shine anymore, does it?
But here's a really important piece of the puzzle, and it's all about the economy. Over 41% of recent grads are underemployed. Think about that. They're in jobs that don't even require the degree they just spent a fortune on. So for a lot of them, that first step on the ladder, it isn't even there.
So let's be really clear here. This isn't about not wanting to work. This is about adapting. It's about surviving in a totally different economic landscape. This is strategy, not apathy.
And a huge driver of all of this stress? Housing. A Redfin survey found that 70% of young renters are struggling with their housing costs. That is a massive financial burden to deal with every single month.
And that kind of pressure means making some really tough choices. We're talking about working extra shifts, cutting back on essentials, sometimes even skipping meals just to make rent. When that's your reality, it completely changes how you think about your job.
There's this quote I came across that just nails it. The ladder got replaced by a parkour course. Isn't that perfect? The straight, predictable path is just gone. Now it's all about being agile, thinking on your feet, and finding creative ways to move forward.
And that brings us to the new strategy for this parkour course, the portfolio career. The idea is simple. Instead of putting all your eggs in one basket with a single employer, you juggle multiple gigs, projects, and clients. It's a smart way to protect yourself financially and, honestly, to learn a ton of new skills way faster. And you know, this isn't just about money. It's a huge cultural shift too. Gen Z's skepticism about those old, rigid structures, it goes right to the heart of what it even means to be professional. They're basically saying, hey, I'm a whole person, not just an employee.
A great example? Tattoos. Pew Research found that 41% of adults under 30 have a tattoo. So those old school rules about having to cover up to look professional, they're starting to feel really outdated. It's becoming much more about what you can do, not what you look like.
Forbes put it really well. Gen Z is just not going to fit into some cookie-cutter mold. The whole idea of professionalism is changing. It's becoming about delivering results, showing respect, and being your authentic self. That pressure to be a corporate clone is dying out, and Gen Z is at the front of that parade.
Okay, so this push for new ways of working creates this really fascinating clash between generations, and nowhere is that more obvious than with technology, specifically AI.
So check this out. Research from the University of Hong Kong shows a huge divide. For Gen Z students, AI is just a tool, a great one for being more productive and learning faster. But for their teachers, they see a lot more risk. They're worried about students becoming too dependent on it and all the ethical stuff that comes with it.
And when you look at the numbers, it's crystal clear. On a 5-point scale, students are way more optimistic about AI's positive impact. But here's the kicker. When asked about becoming over-reliant on it, teachers' concern level is way up at 4.12. Students, they're way down at 2.87. It's like they're looking at the exact same thing and seeing two completely different futures. And one teacher in this study really summed up that fear. They said they're worried students are being deprived of the actual thinking process. And that's the core of it, right? It's that age-old question, is this new technology a helpful tool, or is it a crutch that stops us from learning?
So where do we go from here? What does all of this mean for employers, for teachers, for the future of work? Let's talk about the blueprint. The good news is businesses can adapt. Upwork has some great suggestions, and it's basically about taking a page from Gen Z's playbook. Things like breaking big projects into smaller, more manageable pieces that freelancers can tackle, or building an internal talent marketplace so your own employees can try out new roles and learn new skills. It's all about creating a more flexible, dynamic system instead of that old, rigid ladder.
And that really brings us to the big takeaway. Gen Z isn't just being rebellious, they're being rational. They're building a blueprint for a world that's fundamentally different. And the question we should all be asking is, what if their blueprint isn't just for them? What if it's the survival guide we all need for the future?